hard times. Just an old friend, just an old friend to me. I said hard times. Just an old friend to me. Tell me now, old friend, well, when you gonna let me be? Can't you feel the cold wind? It's howling down over my soul. Can't you feel the cold wind? It's howling down over my soul. Well, I ain't an old man, but you know my time ain't long.
My Mustang, a 1966 Coupe. This car has been with me for 10 years. And this old girl has been through a lot over the years and has many stories to tell. But for me, it all started back in 2014. And I want to share my story. So let's turn back time, back to 2014. In my early 20s, I was an up-and-coming woodsman, spending every weekend deep in the Norwegian woods, doing hardcore wilderness survival and bushcraft. I wrote a blog about my adventures and had quite a large following. I even appeared on a couple of radio shows, where it was said that I was to be the new Lars Monsen.
Ganske straks Magnus Marthinsen, som er en skikkelig Lars Monsen.
Ja, han er nye Lars Monsen.
Han er det. Magnus Marthinsen, velkommen til Hallo Petre.
Takk for det.
Du Magnus, vi har fått et tips om at du var en inspirasjon.
And it all led me to land a book deal with a publisher, to write a wilderness survival handbook for young adults. And the publisher had a huge amount of belief in the project and in me as a fresh author. So they already paid me $6,000 in advance for the project, and giving me a 6-month deadline to finish the book. Yet something would happen that made me rethink everything. On Norwegian TV, it aired a TV series called Walkabout with Nils and Ronny. Quite a famous TV duo here in Norway, known for their travel documentaries filled with humor, interesting stories, and usually cool cars that Nils picked out.
Round and round, round we go. Where it stops, nobody knows there.
This time they were traveling in the US, in the former Steel Belt, today known as the Rust Belt. They documented the rise and fall of the city of Detroit and interviewed ordinary people, people on the streets, in the towns, out in the countryside. And to get around, they were using a badass blue 68 Camaro, which got my and the Americans' attention.
Shouldn't have the engine. I said, that's a 68, man. I said, that's a Camaro. So you just cruise it with this? Wow, man, you gotta be stopping at the gas station. every gas station you see, it's like... 2 years ago, I flipped a Mustang. My buddy had a brand new Mustang. Went from first gear to second gear, we went 90 mile an hour. Boom. And then never saw a third gear because we started flipping. I was like, dude, you know what, you really fucked up. I said, you just killed us, man. We flipped 9 times, caught on fire. I got thrown out the back windshield from the front passenger seat, out the back windshield. I don't remember nothing after that. All I remember is the Penrose police looking at me saying, Mr. Reeves, how you feeling? I was like, yes, oh man. I do asphalt work. Look, asphalt's closing up for the season. I gotta find a job for wintertime. I ain't a millionaire. I ain't got a dime in my pocket right now. Hey, McDonald's got free coffees.
Yeah.
For the whole week. For the whole week, man. Dude, this car is making 240 easy. Look at the heads on that. Wow. 760 horsepower? This thing will be pushing.
We take a picture of it?
Yeah, my little brother like this shit like this.
Alrighty.
Get out here, guys. Hey, nice meeting you guys.
Very nice meeting you.
Hey, just be careful in this car, man. I'm telling you.
It was a beautiful documentary and many touching stories with people and places. And it was clear that the American people found a sense of proudness in seeing that blue Camaro drive by. Almost like it said, see what we used to be.
There's our mayor.
Let's get in the car and catch him.
But not everybody understood the two Norwegian guys traveling around in the blue Camaro. So when they tried to find the eccentric mayor of the city of Braddock, it got quite dramatic.
Då får jag väldigt speciellt. Jag kan gå i för en helvete. Något till vänster, kom dig! Getting pulled there. Är det sant? Det är fantastiskt. Det är perfekt. Nej. Hi, what are you doing?
Registration on you by chance?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, what are you guys just filming?
Yeah.
Okay.
Was the mayor calling you?
Yes. What, you guys following him for a reason?
Yeah, we're trying to get hold of him because we can reach him on his phone. We got this phone number.
Oh, what are you trying to reach him for?
We're making a documentary.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be right back with you, bud.
Yeah, good.
Vi tar till på station. Då kommer det folk komma.
Hi there.
The officer explained to you what was going on.
Yeah?
Yeah, that our mayor got really concerned.
Oh yeah, that was too bad.
It was just like a stalker situation. What you guys are doing. It's not a problem though. We just want to make sure he's right. I love this car.
Okay,
I
yeah.
tried to get the 68.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Yeah, just
Yeah.
go ahead and do what you're doing.
If you talk to him then, tell what the deal was.
I'll give him a call.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, no more following him.
No. I'll drive the other direction next time. Thank you.
Good. Thanks for your cooperation.
Thank you.
Thanks for what you guys did.
Thank you.
Have a good one, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
The documentary made a huge impact on me. It spoke to my soul. Since I was a kid, I had always been fascinated by the American way of life, especially in regards to agriculture and the motor industry. And that blue Camaro, man, was it cool. Meanwhile, I was running around in the Norwegian wilderness, trying to find material for my book. The publisher wanted the book finished in under 6 months, and the deadlines were tough. They seemed pleased with my work, and had faith in me, and I did my best to meet their needs. And as much as I enjoyed the fact that I was going to be a published author by the age of 22, I was quietly struggling with the writing. And I didn't feel for writing much. I had lost the passion for it. And for me, it felt more like doing homework at school than writing my own book. I couldn't concentrate, because all I wanted was a 60s muscle car. I didn't know what type of car I wanted, but it had to be American, and it had to have a loud V8. And I wanted to do something similar, use a classic car and combine it with nature, combine my two passions. So I started looking at classifieds for used muscle cars, and it did consume a lot of my time. Time I really should be spending on writing my book. My eyes were open for a cheap Camaro, until I stumbled upon a video on YouTube that really would impact my whole life. It was a video about test driving a blue 66 Ford Mustang and interviewing the owner called Mike Meyer. I don't know why, but it felt like I just had met the love of my life. It was instant. That is the car I want. It was no doubt in my mind. The beautiful lines, the stands, and the wide wheels. It was beautiful, and still bad as it can be. And the way Mike talked about his passion for old school racing, it was so inspiring. And Mike used his car in autocross, where he pretty much beat everybody, with his aggressive and seemingly effortless style of driving. I guess I wanted to experience what Mike experienced. And the only way I could do that was to build something like that myself. But actually, I was not too unfamiliar with Mustangs. Because my father, he had a '68 Mustang convertible in the 80s. But he sold it before I was born. I never saw the car myself, but I grew up hearing many stories about it. And I remember he told me that it was kind of bolted together from stuff he found. It had original Shelby wheels in the back. And in the front there was some Volvo steel wheels. Yeah, a 60s Mustang, that would be perfect. Just like my dad's. And so it began. And one day, a dark blue 66 Coupe came for sale. It had a 289 V8, not much rust, so I went for it. I used all the money that I'd been paid by the publisher, plus some of my own savings, and I bought it. That following summer was a great summer. It turned into a nice little cruiser. Me and my brother cruised around in it with our Ray-Bans on, feeling like the Winchester brothers from the Supernatural series, driving around in their Impala.
Hey. Hey. How long you been up?
Long enough to find us a case.
I take it that means you're feeling back to normal?
Yeah, whatever normal is in our world.
Oh yeah!
And actually we got very inspired and creative during our cruising and decided to try to pitch a TV series called Ramblin' Brothers. Well, it never really got off the ground, but the idea was to travel around in the Mustang, visiting supernatural places and talk to people. Who knows, maybe we can try again in the future. But I have a book to write. My book was coming together, and I felt it started to look good. But I was behind the schedule, and the publisher started to become impatient with me. After almost a year of writing, it was all to come to an abrupt end. They wanted to prioritize other authors that had similar projects. The publisher decided to cancel the project. My dream as being a published author was shattered to pieces. It was a kick in the butt for me. How could I ruin this rare opportunity? If I only had concentrated more on my writing and not dreaming about silly ideas, I was disappointed with myself. I feared I had to pay back the $6,000 the publisher had paid me, which would mean selling the Mustang, because I didn't have $6,000 on me. But luckily for me, the publisher agreed on me keeping the money, so they took it as a financial loss. But I decided to stay optimistic. I still had my job as a small engine mechanic, and I still enjoyed the outdoors. So I figured out I was doing okay. I was lucky to borrow a tight space in my colleague's garage for free, which I was very grateful for. And that following winter I decided to take the engine out. With the engine out of the car, I gave the engine bay a treatment and treated it inside with rust protection. I brought the engine to my workplace, where I worked on the engine in the evenings after closing time. But I took it all apart and gave it new piston rings and bearings. I was on a very tight budget, but I did manage to buy a used Edelbrock inlet manifold and some nice Ford racing valve covers. And then I gave the engine a nice name and wrote it on the flywheel. And I had my faith that she would be a strong girl. And the heart of the car was installed, and she fired right up. I was surprised, but mostly proud of my own work. I did it. I had saved up some money and bought a complete set of autometer instruments, just like Mike had in his old blue. And the old beige interior got exchanged for a black one, and did the retrimming myself. It was a tough job, but it turned out pretty good. My Mustang was better and stronger than ever. I had found so much joy in the work and driving it. It was nothing like Mike's old blue, but in my mind it was. And today, 10 years later, my Meyer t-shirt still fits. Well, almost, if I hold my breath and suck my gut in. And I still have the Mustang. And after a long time in hibernation, the car sees sunlight again, and I have my tools out to work on it. Yet, it wouldn't be a strange sight to see me working on this car over the years. Because I know every single bolt on this car, and what I have told you so far in this story was just a humble beginning. After I lost the book deal, fixing up this car became sort of my replacement achievement, I think. I might not have written a book, but I did for sure restore an old and awesome Mustang. And over the last 10 years, it has been a friend, an enemy, but I guess most of all, my love. And if this car could speak, it would have a lot to say. And today, the car is facing a new transformation. Perhaps the last one I will ever do to the car. This car is not just a car to me, but a symbol of my own journey through life the last 10 years. So right now, I have a new design for it in the works. And like always, done in an original type of way that I guess that I've been kinda known for. I even have a four-legged friend to help me out, or at least give me a painful back massage. Yet sanding down this car is kinda like going back in history. Each layer tells a story. Covered in this blue dust, I am reminded of how much this car sent me out on my biggest adventure of my life. Because hanging on my wall, it was something I couldn't get off my mind. I had to go to the destination I had dreamt about, to see my dream in person. And one late evening, I made a decision to build All Blue.
Think about this guy, he can drive, I'm telling you. That little Mustang just goes in places it shouldn't go, at a speed that it's not really been, that it shouldn't go either.
But I had to do it my way, with my limited resources that I had. And for months I studied pics and videos of All Blue, trying to figure out what I needed to build a replica of that car. The entire front end was made of fiberglass, and luckily for me these parts were available through Mike's old family business called Meyer Racing. So after a month on a cargo ship crossing the Atlantic Ocean from the US, I arrived on a late and dark November evening. But for me it was like Christmas had come early. And then the most important thing was to get the wheel and tire combo right. And I found out who made them. It was a small company in California that was called Team 3 Wheels. So I ordered a custom set. They were handmade and rather expensive. I came across a 4-speed top loader that I paid $500 for. Although my engine ran good after my overhaul last winter, I felt I needed more power. So I built this, still a 289 short block, but now with new aluminium heads, bigger camshaft and a huge inlet manifold, and a big Holly 4-barrel double pumper on top, should make this engine pushing. Things were coming together. But this project was taking a toll on me. My obsession with this car had become almost unhealthy, and I had lost a lot of weight, and I looked quite skinny for a while. My mother was worried, but I couldn't stop working on it. It was like a drug. We were now into 2017, but I had done the work at a rapid speed. I made fender flares myself in the back, welding pieces of metal together, and they looked perfect. And then the time for the paint job had come. I planned to paint it myself, using a spray gun. I didn't know the paint code for Mike's car, but for me as a country boy, I thought it looked very similar to New Holland tractor blue. So through my work, I got a gallon of blue tractor paint and gave it a go. And out of that simple garage, it rolled a blue beast. There she was. It was a surreal feeling, seeing and being near her for the first time. By September 2017, the car was mostly done. So many hours spent in that little garage. But what I had achieved was nothing else than a masterpiece. I did that, and I was proud. This car was something completely different than my old Mustang. The aggressive engine, the feel of the 4-speed manual, and the immense grip of those big tires. It felt like driving it on rails. It was like a race car. I was impressed, but I guess it was only one more thing to do. To show it to Mike Meyer. I decided to send Mike some pictures of my car, and luckily he was not offended by my home-built style, and he answered me back with enthusiasm. And one thing led to another, and suddenly I was on a plane to California. Arriving in sunny California, I was filled with excitement, joy, and some fear. I had never been to the US before. In fact, I had never been this far away from home in my life. And I was all alone. And in a big city like San Francisco, I did feel quite out of place. I knew nobody here. But I decided to be brave. So the next morning, I headed to Mike's shop in my rental car. And there I met the man himself, doing the work he knows best, making old Mustangs handle on the track. It was very special to seeing Mike at work. And I also got to meet his wife, Brianne, who actually is the owner of All Blue. And then I got to meet All Blue myself, the one item in the world that had caught my attention so much. It was really a cool shop that you can spend hours in. But Mike invited me out for lunch with some of his buddies. It was all a great time, and hearing stories from their life was very inspiring and cool. Mike was a really cool and down-to-earth guy. I thanked him for giving me his time and for all the inspiration. He wished me safe travels and wondered where I was going next. He did, however, give me a strange look when I said I was going to Iowa next. Iowa? What are you going to do there? He said. Well, I told him I always wanted to see the prairie areas in the Midwest. He laughed at me and said, well, it's very flat out there, so just that alone is quite impressive. And I guess he thought I was a bit strange for wanting to go to Iowa, perhaps. Well, maybe I was. But before I left for the Midwest, I first wanted to see the Blackbird SR-71 up close, which I took a picture of. Arriving in Des Moines, Iowa, I quickly felt more at home. First thing that hit me was the smell of cow manure and seeing those endless fields, and my childhood fascination about American agriculture had been satisfied. And Mike was right. Iowa was pretty flat. Arriving at the John Deere Museum that I took a picture of, I walked around and looked at some tractors. Then my journey continued south. After driving from Waterloo, Iowa to Nashville, which took 10 hours, I visited the Grand Ole Opry that I also took a picture of. Before driving up to the Smoky Mountains, where I went for a stroll and bought a hat. And lastly, I flew to Boston, where my trip across America ended, and I flew back home to Norway. Back home, after 2 weeks in the US, I felt proud of what I had done. It felt unreal, like a dream. Did I actually do that? I was amazed. What had started out as a small dream, an old Mustang in a simple garage in Norway, got me all the way to California, suddenly eating lunch with my hero, and then across the US. It was a surreal pinch-me moment, and I guess dreams really do come true.
Like
And just like Nils and Ronnie, who actually was the main cause of all of this in the first place, I had now been traveling around in the US myself. Well, my rental car was not exactly like a Camaro or a Mustang, but nevertheless an experience I will remember for life. And just like Nils and Ronnie, I had some interesting experiences that I will never forget. Like the blood-stained carpet in a motel room that I slept in Nashville. I'm pretty sure it has been a murder in there. Or when those 3 Mexican-looking guys suddenly surrounded my car in a parking lot in Modesto, California. Or when I walked alone in San Francisco in the middle of the night on my way back to my hotel, amongst drug addicts and homeless people. I had never been further away from my comfort zone, but man did I feel alive. But I guess the worst thing that happened was that I took a right turn on a red light in my rental car, which apparently was not allowed in the state of Missouri. In fact, my little mishap got my name blacklisted, and I am now a threat to national security. So when I got home, I was informed that I need to apply for a visa if I ever want to visit the US again. Oh man, taking a right turn on a red light is serious stuff over there. And I promise that the blood-stained carpet in Nashville had nothing to do with me. Just so that's clear. So to this day, I am still banned from the US. Okay. Oh well. As 2018 arrived, I had moved out of the little garage, and I was now renting a much bigger workshop. I even had a car lift. Things were getting professional. I played around with some different wheel and tire combinations, but the car was staying pretty much the same. When 2019 arrived, I decided to give it a small facelift by painting the big wheels white. And as always, I found my paint at a tractor supply store. So New Holland white paint, of course. I also painted the chrome in black. I really liked this look, and I thought this is how I'm gonna keep it. But things were about to turn very dark. One day I woke up from a bad nightmare. I dreamt that I was fleeing the police in Dublin, in a dark and insanely fast Mustang, making a havoc in the city streets. Thank God it was just a bad dream. Or was it? At the time, I had traveled a lot to Ireland and become fascinated by Celtic mythology, and also the famous unicorn Mustang, driven by Ken Block. And I guess all this seeped into my subconscious mind, and why it appeared like it did in my dream. But it all gave me a new idea that I decided to call the Kelpie. The Kelpie is a dark horse from Celtic mythology, but it's a shapeshifter, and it will trick you and drag you into a deep and dark lake and kill you. And one November evening, I really went all in, putting the little blue coupe in a lot of pain. I cut off all fenders, lowered the car 2 inches, and widened it 4. Outside, it was dark and gloomy, but inside the workshop, sparks were flying. I did everything with an angle grinder, making new fender flares out of sheet metal. Painted it satin black. It was actually not paint, it was plasti dip, or rubber paint as some call it. Again, I was so focused on the result, and I think I had the car mostly done by a 2-week period. But this insane transformation hadn't really cost me a lot of money. The sheet metal was just something laying around in my shop. So other than the wheel spacers and a ton of stickers, and the pieces of carbon fiber that Charles at Meyer Racing almost gave to me for free, it was very budget friendly. It looked sinister and dark and scary, and seeing the car in person gave me a creepy feeling. At idle, the car was shaking so badly due to the stiff suspension that almost all of my stickers started to fall off from the vibration. It really scared the crap out of me, and I didn't even dare to test drive it. But it was not really drivable. The car never even left the workshop, just reversed out and back in again. The frame was too low to the ground, and the rear axle too close to the frame rails. And too many wheel spacers bolted together meant it actually was a death trap, just like the Kelpie mythology. As the world was in for a dark time during the pandemic and went totally crazy, I tried my best to be in my own world, where there is less chaos. My own time in the dark had by now quickly faded. I didn't want to stay there anymore. And one evening I looked at the Kelpie, and I thought, what a hideous thing. What on earth can I use it for? And I felt I had ruined my Mustang. But my actions had screwed it all up. Why couldn't I just keep it like it was in 2016? It was just so perfect. So I ripped off the plastic dip, and underneath the dark kelp, an old friend appeared. I made some new fender flares, which turned out pretty good. And in a way, I was now back to my beloved all blue kind of look. I still had a lot of blue paint left, so I painted the front fenders and the rear quarter panels. It was not a good paint job. The workshop was too cold, it was late October. But at least it was blue again. It looked pretty good, and it was very close to how Mike's car looks these days. But as winter was coming, the Mustang didn't even get out on the road. I just put it in the back of my workshop and stored it. I had other projects to prioritize now. As 2020 was a bad year for many people, I guess 2021 would turn out to be mine. Because I was being prepared for a very challenging year. My beloved dog, Lakota, got injured in a car accident. Well, in other words, I drove over my own dog, which resulted in her breaking a leg severely, and she got some internal bleedings. It was simply the worst day of my life. But I used the summer to help her heal back from the severe broken leg. And by the end of summer, she had healed miraculously well, and she lived a good life after that. But another traumatic thing was about to happen. In October, my father suddenly passed away at the age of 61 of a heart attack. I desperately tried to bring him back to life on the living room floor, but it was no use. He died in my arms. And with him, the stories about his blue Mustang died as well. following year was pretty much affected by my father's death. I had to step into a new role, taking care of the family homestead and my mother. Well, I guess it's fair to say that we took care of each other. But I truly enjoyed my new life. I didn't really miss my crazy Mustang projects. And Lakota's leg was almost back to normal. At least she lived a decent life with her little handicap. But the feeling of guilt of hurting her was still bothering me. I enjoyed mostly my spare time as a hobby farmer, working with firewood and attending a small field of potatoes and some vegetables. Yet again, I would be tested. Lakota, who had been with me since 2012, began to feel her age. She became ill, and after 6 months of mostly taking care of her, she passed away that summer. Well, it was sad, but it's all a part of having animals. She lived a long and good life, and got close to 12 years old. But the feeling of guilt after being the cause of her broken leg and internal bleedings 2 years earlier is a trauma I still have with me to this day. And what I have come to find out is that the feeling of guilt caused by hurting someone you love is far more greater than the feeling of grief for the ones who have passed.
Yeah. Honey, I got a dog.
My grief for my dog and my father was shortly replaced with a lot of happiness as I got my little puppy, Tamarack, and he certainly kept me entertained.
Oi, 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 oi. Oh, damn, damn. What? Ready? Ôi đuổi nữa đi.
But we turn out to become great buddies.
Con quỷ vậy.
Yet, it had, no doubt, been a lot of tough challenges coming my way the last few years. But if you have a wish to be mentally strong, it is only one way to become it. To experience trials and tribulations, to be hardened by the fire of life, you have to be tempered and put through the fire. That's what makes you strong. Meanwhile, The Mustang still sat in the back of my workshop, gathering dust. I even had begun to sell some parts from it, like the hood with the big hood scoop and the carbon fiber parts. My old blue face was starting to fade as well. I felt I had done what I had set out to do with the car, to build my dream car. And I was starting to think that perhaps it only should be one all blue in the world, the real one in Livermore, California. This car had followed me for so long. It had become my white whale, or white horse, I guess. I guess you can say the Mustang had been my creative outlet, my canvas, where I, as an artist, could express my feelings and moods. I didn't care about driving it fast, or use it on the track, or if others didn't approve of it. For me, it was all a personal thing, to create what I could see in my mind, to play the fool and just go for it. And I had done that. Although I was now in a much happier state, I was not sure what to do with the old Mustang. And my mind struggled a bit with negative thoughts and bitterness. Like, why did I buy the car in the first place? I think my life would have taken a very different course if I hadn't bought it. Maybe I even could have been a famous wilderness writer with many books here in Norway. But life is full of choices. There is many paths to take. And I do believe some paths are fated for you. But I was not sure which path I was on for the moment. Maybe it was time to let her go, to end an old chapter in my life. So one day, I put it up for sale. I changed out the wheels, gave it a slightly different look, with a bunch of stickers that I had. I couldn't bear the thought of selling it with the old blue look. I felt it was almost an insult to Mike. I silently hoped someone would buy it quick and easy, so it got out of my life without much hesitation. But there was not much interest, and just after some days, I decided to take the advert down. Like something told me not to sell, like it was not the time. The Mustang had become such a part of me and my story, and I felt like I was trying to sell a piece of my soul.
Oi. Hallo damer, kan du si da. Hallo damer. Hæ?
I decided to instead get the car out of hibernation. So I brought it home to the small farm, put it in the shed, and hopefully I could find the motivation and strength to get it back on the road again. So I guess I was on the right path after all. Even though I personally felt done with the car at the time, I had always built it for myself, and maybe it was the time to build it for others than me. At least keep it in the family. And somehow the last 10 years had been the toughest, most interesting and the best adventure I had ever been on, and I wouldn't be without it. I was a different person now. I was stronger, wiser and more experienced. And I don't think my wilderness handbook could have done that. A lot happens and changes over a 10-year period. People come and people go. New ones gets born, and loved one passes away, and a part of you die as well. And today, I prefer working in the garden and doing tasks around the farm more than modifying the old Mustang. I guess I feel at peace now. At the age of 33, I now feel more in balance with my soul than I ever was. As a kid, my hero was my neighbor Finn. He was a retired farmer, but he still had 3 tractors and loads of firewood to split, and he also did a lot of small maintenance jobs around on his old farm. And for me, that seemed like the perfect life, the dream life, and I wanted to be like him when I grew up. Just to live in the pace of nature and driving tractors. And in a way, it is where I am today. I guess I am an old farmer in my soul. Here is no rush. What I don't get around to do today, I will do tomorrow. But there is always dirt under my fingernails. It might not be Falcon racing tires at the moment, but these tires are still as tough. And the strong mindset to push through challenges and hard work, that never faded. And I hope my old man upstairs approves of my weightlifting technique. But working on the Mustang outdoors in late summer really is a very soothing job. I enjoy it. And unlike Captain Ahab, I am about to catch my white whale or horse. I paint cars like my mother makes food. No specific recipe, just mix the paint till it feels kinda nice. I do not understand the mixing ratios, spray gun settings or anything like that. So I mix and adjust the spray gun till it feels right. But it is really all about experience. Painting outdoors is not the ideal thing, but you gotta use what you have and do the best with it. It is no high-end fabrication. I just did everything myself with the basic tools and the will to do it. It is not perfect, never was, or will never be. But that was never my intent either. Nothing is really perfect. It is the flaws that makes it real and interesting. And the small mishaps and mistakes that had been done along the way, well, you learn to adapt to them, not to get stuck in the past, wishing it was different. There is always a solution and a way, no matter how dark and hopeless it may seem in the moment. But let's see how the Mustang turned out. So there we have it, the story behind my '66 Ford Mustang. What the next 10 years will bring, I am not sure of. But I'm pretty sure I still will have this horse